Welcome to CityWise. I'm your host, Tiana Stevens. CityWise is produced by the City of Rochester to shine a spotlight on city living at its best. Well, every year, the city's Black Heritage Committee puts on a wonderful lineup of activities during the month of February to celebrate Black heritage and to recognize the central role of African Americans in U.S. history and here in Rochester. This year's theme celebrates the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act and recognizes the riots of July 1964. Joining us now is David Haygood, Jr., co-chair of the Black Heritage Committee, and Dr. David Anderson with the 150 Ancestors Project at City Hall. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
David, can you start by telling us what is the Black Heritage Committee?
Black Heritage Committee consists of volunteers that are African American employees, city employees. We've been together about 13 years, we're going into, and our focus is to recognize achievements and contributions of local African Americans and national African Americans to this area.
Tell us a little bit more about this year's theme and how are the themes chosen every year?
We always pick out a theme for every year, but this year we try to tie it into a national organization. It's not coming to me right now, but this year's theme is based on the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act, and also the July 64 riots also.
Okay. Dr. Anderson, you're known throughout Rochester. You wear many hats. Today you're talking about the 150 Ancestors Project at City Hall that was started by the committee. Tell us about that project. What is that?
It's a matter of getting from residents who may have known or somehow associated their comings and goings with people who have passed on, but when they were alive and here in Rochester, they made significant and persistent contributions to bettering the life of people in Rochester.
And you're compiling a list of 150, and that ties in with last year's theme. Tell us a little bit about the significance of that.
Well, 150 years has an awful lot to do with many things in the way of looking at American life and history. And of course, we're right at the 150th anniversary of the Civil War, which was the real test of whether the nation could be one nation. And thus what we're doing here in Rochester, though it focuses principally on people who lived and worked here, nonetheless, they made a contribution to making that war come out right. That is to say, one nation, indivisible. We're still working on the liberty and justice.
And you're compiling a list right now, and the community is welcome to submit ideas, recommendations. How's that going so far?
We have in the excess of 200 names, and probably adding to them all the while. And we're in the process of vetting, I think the term is, seeing if the recommendation stands up to what we have some objective information on. Therefore, at some point, the 150 names will be on a bronze, I believe it will be bronze plaque in City Hall, and hopefully it will encourage people to stay in touch with their own kinsmen and see if we can't, maybe in another 150 years, have another contribution.
Okay, and David, I understand that's going to culminate in a nice event, dedication of the plaque at City Hall. Do you have an idea of when that might happen?
Not right now until we get these names straight, because you want to do it right the first time and go through the proper procedures, again, properly vetting it, and you just don't want to step into something like this here half-hearted. It's that important to us, and what you'll find, there's a lot of stories that you just didn't know about or have not been talked about, and there's some significant families and contributions that have been made you just don't hear about. And a lot of our youth heard about some of these things and some of the stuff, the struggles that they have gone through. That will, I'm sure, inspire some people of any race. But these things need to be known about, so that's part of our job is to get some of this stuff out here and let people know we have not forgotten, but it's also to remind people to discover some of these things and inspire the whole community.
And it looks like there'll be an educational component to
You'll
that as well.
You'll have a video that will go along with it, a brochure program that talks about each one of these persons' contributions, so it'll be comprehensive, but once we get a more fine-tuned date, we'll definitely let you know about it.
Okay, and getting back to Black Heritage Month at City Hall, what's first on the list? What can we expect? Our
usual kickoff is always the Art and Jazz event, which I'm chair of that along with Lynette Griffin. That's at City Hall. It's going to be Thursday the 6th at City Hall in the atrium also. We have some young up-and-coming artists, including some students. We always include a few students. But again, it's centered on the civil rights theme. So people are encouraged to do something on that theme, but they're also submitting some of their latest works. I think it's a strong show. And what I find interesting is when people look at some of the things, it's not always going to be pretty, but it's not meant to bring a down to it. It's meant to encourage, but also our job as artists is to show the times that we live in and reflect that. And it's not going to be pretty all the time, but what we do hope that it does is create dialogue. And that's the job of an artist, is to get people talking about things and reflect on what's going on. And if it's something that you may not see eye to eye with, that's something to look into yourself about and say, what can I do to help make this situation better?
I understand one of the youngest artists is a student of yours, 12 years old. What did they contribute to the
her name is Anaya,
gallery?
And she's been coming to my gallery for about 4 months now. She's pretty steady, but we've been working on pencil drawing and fine-tuning her craft. But this particular piece of Martin Luther King, this was her first actual painting. And she started out pretty apprehensive, but once she got into it, she discovered something else about herself. But that's what I enjoy, as far as seeing a young person or any person discovering their gift and just letting that soar and let that swell up in them. And now she just can't wait to get back to the drawing board and create something else now that she has discovered what her capabilities are. That's the beautiful part, and see how it affects their lives. So please come down and check her out. Come talk to her.
That's wonderful. And if people can't make it to that particular event, those pictures will still be hanging.
They will hang until mid-March.
Okay, and I understand you have some pieces there as well. You're an artist yourself.
Yes,
Can you talk about some of your pieces there? And
I've got pretty much a black and white theme. I've got a couple pieces of jazz artists like a Coltrane. I have a jazz singer, but painted on plywood, actually. I've got one of Rihanna that I did. I have another piece of a March on Washington that I put together just this weekend. I just enjoy doing it, so just another chance to exercise my gift and see who we can inspire.
And they're very wonderful, so congratulations on that.
Thank you for that.
Very popular at City Hall is the Gospel Fridays events. Yes. Who is lined up for that? And these are free events in the City Hall atrium.
It always moves to different choirs from around, I believe, Mount Olivet, I believe, and I don't really want to leave out a name because I may forget something, but each week on Friday from 12:30 to 1, a guest will be featured. And you want to talk about something inspiring, especially when the people are looking over from the banisters. I can tell you they don't want to go back to work because they've been rejuvenated or inspired by the singing, and it's just something to see and witness, and we encourage anybody to come out and support it.
It's definitely one of my favorites, and I can tell you the first one on the 14th, we have Immaculate Conception Choir. We actually have a little bit of video we'd like to show you. You really have to see it to understand how wonderful this event is. Let's take a look.
When I get to heaven, when I get to heaven, gonna wear a robe. No man, and gonna see King Jesus, gonna see King Jesus sitting on a throne. No man, gonna walk all over those streets of gold. No man can hinder me going to a land where we'll never grow up. No man can in that grave, in the morning, fare ye well, fare ye well.
Okay, so those performances are Fridays in February at 12:30 in the City Hall atrium. Again, they're free. Next in line is Mount Olivet on the 21st, and then we have School of the Arts Choir on the 28th. Let's go ahead and we have a piece of video of School of the Arts from years past. Let's take a listen to that. And again, that was School of the Arts Choir, and you might recognize those words. They're the words of Frederick Douglass. So very inspiring, very educational. Music plays, a big role in the events lined up. Tell us about the Heritage Gospel Concert. Who's performing this year?
Usually the Acoma, which is a female choir, and the Voices of Thunder, which is all male choir. And usually this is tied into a year annual where they do a fundraiser for education. And this is going to be at First Genesis Baptist, which is on, I believe it's 292 Hudson Avenue. And those are always, you're talking about powerful vocals. Just the human voice itself as an instrument is just ridiculous. And again, inspiring, goosebumps I'm talking about.
And this is open to the community. Is there a charge for this event?
All these events are free. The only ones we charge for is the gala, which is $50, and that's our month-ending event. But I believe there's one more thing. Oh, we do have a conference, actually, and that's this Saturday, February 1st. It's our second one doing it. We had it at RIT last year. This year we'll be featured at REOC campus on 161 Chestnut, I believe. And then that starts at 9 o'clock until 2.
And that's a $10
charge.
Okay. Okay, well, Dr. Anderson, it's all the events we've seen. They're vibrant, they're artful, very educational, and you yourself, you've been a participant in many of the youth events. Tell us about your experiences with the Black Heritage storytelling events.
My experience with the storytelling events is to recommend certain of my colleagues to be on site with the youth when they are coming up with their storytelling. There is a Black Storytelling League of Rochester, and there's some individual tellers, and this is an opportunity to bring them and the youth tellers together, because those old guys ain't going to be here all the time, and yet the story must go on. Yes, it should be entertaining, but the story is also about how a people, how a community has presented itself during the period it was here.
Okay, and you mentioned community. Black Heritage Committee organizes all these events, but it really takes, you know, the work of the community and community organizations. What are some of the partnerships? You mentioned Acoma. What are some of the other groups that help with the events?
Again, like the storytelling event, we have Tina Langston, who works with our youth department. They have an event called The Movement, a generational perspective. That's going to be going on at the new Ryan Center on Webster Avenue. But we tap into all kinds of wisdom out of this community, and to piggyback on what Good Doctor was saying, it's important to pass down this wisdom and keep these stories alive, and tell about your heritage, and to keep that going. So to see a person, how I like to put it is, we should always be in a position of one hand up, reaching out for a mentor, and we should always be a mentor to somebody, to always keep that link going. And that's a part of what we do. We always rely on a lot of people who have contributed for advice and to counsel us on certain things. So the committee is always open to those kind of partnerships and things that are going on. You don't want to duplicate things that are going on, but we should always look at a collective and try to make things happen.
So the gala, we'll get to that in a little bit, but that is one of the ways that you kind of honor those committee members that have been exceptional, or community members that have really stepped up. Dr. Anderson, you brought some posters with you, and when I mentioned that you wear lots of hats, tell us what you have there. You have an event that you plan every year to honor the colored troops. There's no special day on the calendar, but yet you plan something.
Well, consistent with this being the centennial of the Civil War, Rochester citizens are calling attention to the unsung role, the absolutely essential role that the United States colored troops played in bringing about a positive end to the Civil War, if you can think of it in that way. Without the 200,000 men of color who were finally enlisted in the Union Army after it was almost a lost cause, we have the opportunity for the nation to continue as one. Now, every year on 2 dates, we raise up some of the issues that prevented men of color from initially being enlisted in the Union Army. They weren't this, they weren't that. There was every reason was being offered from the president on down to keep black men out of the role of soldier, because a soldier with uniform representing the government is in fact a man, and the African American people, males as such, were not regarded as whole men. Therefore, when we do this on behalf of those who lie in yonder hallowed ground, we're actually standing at the foot of certain graves of men who, after the Civil War, came here to Rochester. There are at least 14 buried at Mount Hope Cemetery and one at Riverside Cemetery. Why they came here, we don't know, but we are hoping to engage over time some youth in doing the research that will give us a better, more rounded picture of who these individuals were. Because even after they were finally admitted to the Union Army, they were still discriminated against by the government. They couldn't have black officers, for example. The pay, initially, they were paid $10 a month, whereas a white private would get $13 a month. And all of those issues would have knocked off a less determined people. But African American people were determined to stand up and be men and to be a part of this nation. And therefore we do this tribute. You might notice that that one inset photograph of the gentleman there, he came to this city after the Civil War, settled here to help his daughter raise her fatherless children. She was a widow. And he became a well-known figure in community. And lo and behold, many years after his death, I discover some of his descendants. And right now, one of them is my best friend. And by the way, the image of this man, George Brown, shows a man very clearly related to my great-grandfather, who was also a colored Yankee soldier.
Wow.
And they also fought in the same theater. But whether they knew each other is yet for me to find out. And we're going to try to bring youngsters along, learning about how their community was put together, learning about what it takes to be a man under certain circumstances, and then going on and being and keeping that rhythm going. So that's what that's about.
Well, you speak of connections.
Okay.
Before we get to the next one, the picture of Frederick Douglass there, what was Frederick Douglass's role? And of course we know, he spent many years in Rochester, published the North Star paper here, specifically on behalf of the colored troops in the Civil War. What did Frederick Douglass do? What did he say to Abraham Lincoln to change his mind?
It took a while for him to get the opportunity to speak to the president, but through his newspaper and his association with other men of note around the country, he was arguing against the rationale that the president was offering, that we can't have colored men in blue uniforms. We can have them as laborers, but in fact, we would rather that those colored men who are free go to some foreign country like Venezuela to dig coal. But in the end, Douglass does get a chance to make his say in the president's presence, and it was, you got one hand out there fighting, and the toll on those white men, white Northern soldiers, is quite heavy. But you're doing that at the same time you're keeping your strong black hand tied down. Release that hand so that you're fighting with the attitude that you're going to win. And when the president saw how bad things were and how many Northern soldiers were being slaughtered, he eventually issued an executive order called the Emancipation Proclamation, and it called for the enlistment of men of color. And so those,
and that's what you have.
Those roughly 200,000 men were able to provide the margin of victory for the Union. And they must be recognized, not for some reasons that come from another people, but from American people, because we would not have a United States of America except for the difference that the colored troops made 1863 to 1865.
Thank you. You're a walking history book. I've often described you that way. So we just have a little bit of time left to talk about the gala, the culminating event. It's a wonderful event, the 22nd of February on Saturday at 6 p.m. Tell us about that.
That's always our marquee event. We usually have about 500 people. This year we'll be back at the Hyatt again. But to recognize our local heroes and sheroes, we call them. But it's always tied into what our theme is. So how they are chosen is based on recommendations from either the committee members or those in the community who tie into what the theme is, and we select those candidates who best represent that.
Okay, that's wonderful. And If you'd like more information about the Black Heritage Committee or any of the events discussed today, you can call 428-9857 or visit the City of Rochester's website, that's cityofrochester.gov/BHM. Thank you for joining us on this edition of CityWise. I'm Tiana Stevens, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.